Tonight, in a move seen as retaliation, India suspends visa services in Canada. Meanwhile, Saskatchewan's ag community is watching closely. Also, an emotional family reunion 6 years in the making. A little boy from Syria is finally reunited with his parents. Plus, in a roller coaster season for the Riders, we look at 3 of the team's receivers ranked in the top 10 of the CFL thanks to their consistency.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Thursday, September 21st, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Good evening and thank you for watching. India is suspending its visa services in Canada in what's widely seen as retaliation. It's after Ottawa accused Indian government officials of being involved in the killing of a Canadian Sikh leader on Canadian soil. Now, CBC News has learned some new details. Olivia Stefanovich reports.
The world's attention is on Canada, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau isn't flinching.
As I said on Monday, there are credible reasons to believe that agents of the government of India were involved in the killing of a Canadian on Canadian soil.
Trudeau continues to stand by his allegation that Delhi helped assassinate Hardeep Singh Nijjar, a prominent member of a movement calling for a sovereign Sikh state, considered a terrorist by India for years.
We call upon the government of India to take seriously this matter and to work with us to shed full transparency.
Doubling down even as calls grow for Canada to produce evidence.
No specific information has been shared by Canada on this case.
And the Indian government escalates tensions, suspending visa services in Canada.
The reason is that we have seen Canadian diplomatic interference in our internal affairs.
A senior government source says Ottawa is weighing retaliation on visas, but so far has made no decision. It is pulling some diplomats from the country after they received threats on social media.
And I have seen in the press some efforts to try to drive a wedge between the United States and Canada on this issue, and I firmly reject the idea that
the White House denies it's been reluctant to back Canada.
We have deep concerns about the allegations, and we would like to see this investigation carried forward and the perpetrators held to account.
The 2 Michaels, Michael Scarborough and Michael Provring.
Though the international response more subdued than when China detained Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor.
This is all taking time. Facts will come out. The facts will emerge.
CBC News has learned Canada has signals and human intelligence that show the involvement of Indian government officials in this crime. Some of the signals intelligence include Indian diplomats present in Canada, while others come from a Five Eyes ally. Olivia Stefanovich, CBC News, Ottawa.
One of Saskatchewan's biggest agri-food companies is watching relations between Canada and India closely. As Adam Hunter reports, it's something the provincial government is monitoring as well.
The Saskatchewan government has been concerned about the potential economic fallout of Canada's relations with India. 2 weeks ago, the province asked why it was not informed that Canada halted negotiations over a new trade agreement with the country. Now, that issue is on the back burner due to recent developments. And people who do business with India say they're keeping a close eye on the situation.
You know, geopolitical risks are a major part of agriculture. And, again, the current crisis between Canada and India is something we're watching very, very closely. You know, we're really quite certain that, in the end, after all of the political issues are more visible, the people of Canada and India have a long-term partnership that works for both nations.
Al-Khatib's company is one of the largest of its kind in the world. He says Canada has the arable land and water that India does not and can produce more food more efficiently. He says India needs Canadian products. For example, more than 50% of lentils imported into India originate in Saskatchewan.
And I'm optimistic that the geopolitics and the current situation, give a chance that agriculture and food should be left out. I mean, in every crisis in the world, even when we impose the strictest economic sanctions on a country, we exclude basic foods from those sanctions.
Saskatchewan's Minister of Agriculture was asked about the effects on Saskatchewan's producers and companies. He says the situation is evolving.
We just heard, that there has been, some of the brokers are having challenges about deliveries and that side of it. So that's all I've heard. And as I said, it's just what I've heard, and we're just following it up. As of right now, we're still just following it.
CBC spoke to a farmer who grows peas and lentils east of Saskatoon. Those products are indirectly sold to India. He says it's too early to tell what the potential impacts could be on farmers here. Adam Hunter, CBC News, Regina.
Meanwhile, farmers in Saskatchewan can now donate directly to the food bank through their crop. It's part of a new program that turns donated crop into credit for the food bank. When producers drop off their yields, they can choose how much of it will be considered a donation credit. For example, they can deliver 40 tons of product to AGT Goods and get paid for 39, plus a tax receipt for 1 ton. The food bank will use the money for that 1 ton from AGT to buy food it really needs.
If you're facing food insecurity, there's no reason why you should be sort of forced to have a preset product that doesn't necessarily meet your needs or wants or preferences. And so that's really important. So as much as it is important to say yes to things, there's also a ton of power and a ton of dignity in the ability to say, no, I don't want this. And that's what we're trying to work up and make sure that we have the stocks of food on hand.
They will get dollar-for-dollar food credit with AGT Foods toward pasta, rice, pulses, and staple foods. Farm Credit Canada also getting involved. It says it's matching donations up to $1 million. The sex assault trial of a former junior hockey coach has entered its final stage. Today, Bernie Lynch, the man accused, testified in his own defense. Alexander Kwan was in court and has the latest.
In the Regina courtroom, Bernard Bernie Lynch sat in the witness box to testify in his own defense. Lynch denies the allegations of sexual assault made against him, saying they never occurred. The former junior hockey coach has pleaded not guilty to charges of assault and sexual assault. Lynch has nearly 50 years of coaching experience, but back in the summer of 1988 was the newly named assistant coach of the Regina Pats. As part of that job, he was supposed to lead a hockey school, which he invited a 17-year-old from small-town Saskatchewan to. That teen, now a man in his 50s, testified earlier this week that Lynch directed him to walk around the apartment naked and drink beer. Every time he protested, Lynch told him that he should do what his coach said.
I hope that he feels some sense of relief, maybe even closure, having had an opportunity to be heard on a grand stage as this.
The complainant testified that Lynch eventually climbed into the shower with him and groped him. Any information that could identify the complainant is protected by a publication ban. Lynch testified that the complainant never stayed at his home and that he never touched him. Instead, Lynch insisted that the complainant was dropped off at a hotel and that the next time Lynch saw him was earlier this week, more than 30 years later. Under cross-examination, Lynch shouted that the testimony of the complainant was not an accurate picture of Bernie Lynch and that he would not do that.
I know it's important for my client to express that he didn't do this, but from my perspective as his counsel, the primary thing that I will focus on tomorrow is, has the state proven this case beyond a reasonable doubt?
The trial is expected to hear closing arguments from both sides on Friday. Alexander Kwan, CBC News, Regina.
Former fashion mogul Peter Nygard has pleaded not guilty to all charges against him in his Toronto sexual assault case. Jury selection for his trial got underway today. The 82-year-old appeared in court in a wheelchair with a black suit and long white hair tied back. Nygard is facing 5 counts of sexual assault and 1 count of forcible confinement. He has denied all allegations. An 11-year-old Syrian boy in Saskatoon has been separated from his parents for 6 years. Now, finally, they've been reunited. Bonnie Allen was at the airport for their big moment.
This is what nervous anticipation looks like. 11-year-old Adnan Karsa at the airport, preparing to see his parents for the first time in 6 years.
I didn't meet them in a long time, so I'm kind of nervous, but I'm excited at the same time.
The Syrian boy has been living with his grandmother in Saskatoon while his parents were stuck in Turkey. Adnan's father, Manhel Karsa, says this moment feels like a dream, that he's cried every night for his son. In 2017, as the Syrian war raged on, Adnan's parents sent him with his grandmother to Malaysia to escape the violence just for a few months. But then his parents and grandfather were forced to flee to Turkey with no passports, no money, no way to reunite with their loved ones. Adnan's little sister was born in Turkey, so this is their first time meeting in person. Adnan made it to Canada in 2021, privately sponsored by his aunt and a volunteer group called Moms for Refugees. After he arrived, they began raising money to reunite him with his family.
Fundraising is always hard, and it's a lot of work, and the paperwork is a long process, but I think this is the reward of doing this work. This is the day you always wait for and hope for.
With a huge backlog of immigration and refugee cases and long delays, the family worried this moment wouldn't happen.
We're very happy and excited that he made it safe. We couldn't believe ourselves, we're worried until last minute.
Yeah, I tried to not cry, but I couldn't hold it.
ما له مصدق إنه ابنه بعيد عنه يعني فكر ما نام.
That was a dream, and it was unbelievable to meet his son again.
Wow. Now they'll settle into their new home and try to make up for lost time. Cherishing each new moment together, no matter how small. Even the chance to tie their son's shoes. Bonnie Allen, CBC News, Saskatoon.
The University Bridge in Saskatoon is the backdrop for a gorgeous fall day, a comfortable 19 degrees right in the middle of the day, perfect for maybe a lunchtime walk. And it looks like we're going to continue with the comfy temperatures, but other areas, they'll be looking for some rain as we head into the weekend. So which forecast applies to you? Call it Kennedy. We'll have your answer after the break. Stay with us. The Saskatchewan Roughriders have had a roller coaster season, up and down. They will try to get back to 500 on Friday against the Ottawa Redblacks at TD Place. Kickoff is at 5 o'clock. The Riders may have played with 3 different starting quarterbacks, but a trio of Rider receivers have brought the consistency. Nicholas Frew has more.
Nice window, finds a man, touchdown Riders!
The Saskatchewan Roughriders have done something that no other CFL team has managed so far this year. 3 receivers, Tevin Jones, Sean Bain Jr., and Samuel Emelis, have each caught for more than 700 yards, putting each of them in the league's top 10. Right now, Bain Jr. also holds the distinction of catching more passes than anyone else in the league.
It's a statement to the work we put in, especially with the injury we had, our quarterback, the change we had, we were still consistent.
I feel like 700 is not good enough. I feel like we need some more. And hopefully more yards come more wins.
The Riders have been unlucky with injuries, particularly with quarterbacks. Veteran quarterback Trevor Harris suffered a broken knee in July. Mason Fine stepped up for a few weeks, but injured his hamstring against the Montreal Alouettes in August. Next up, Jake Dolegala. Friday will mark his 5th start of the season.
It's crazy because I try not to even think about that. You know what I'm saying? Like the goal is, just to run routes and get open. So no matter who's delivering it. So when I really step back and look at it, like I'd be like, there's no excuse why you shouldn't still be in the top, no matter who's at the helm.
The Riders have also had trouble running the ball, forcing the offense to rely on the air game to move the chains. Dolegala says having the trio makes things easier.
You know where they're going to be, you have confidence in them. It's just really nice having those guys out there.
The Riders are securely in 3rd place of the Western Division, but they've dropped 2 games in a row. At 6-7, a win against the Ottawa Redblacks would help in their push for the playoffs. Nicholas Frew, CBC News, Regina.
This weather update is brought to you by Capital Ford Lincoln. Truck Mania is on now.
A live look at Regina this hour, just outside of our CBC studios. It was another warm afternoon in southern Saskatchewan. Our weather specialist, Colette Kennedy, joins me now. Colette, it was way warmer than I planned for today.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, it is that time of year. It can be a little bit challenging figuring out, what to wear in terms of the coolness in the morning and then warming up in the afternoon and putting the kids in layers that they peel off by the end of the day, and you hope they make them back in their backpack. You know how it is. Well, look at this in terms of starting again here today with the temperatures and some of the cool readings, but especially Prince Albert, congratulations, 0, but actually it was minus 0.3, and that hasn't happened since last May, about mid-May. So here we are, not quite to fall, it's coming, and already seeing some of those negatives showing up in terms of the thermometer and some of the other readings. Estevan, 10 degrees there in the middle of the night, and then through the daylight hours, just seeing some really nice conditions as things were warming towards the 20s or even into the low 20s in many cases, except towards the southwest. And as we look at your temperature trend over the next few days, you can kind of see that we stick around this neighborhood anyway as we move through the weekend. And in fact, towards the beginning of next week, we're going to see those temperatures popping up, some mid-20s showing up as we go towards Monday, a few days into the fall season, where it will be cooler, but also rainier will be along the west coast. Some much needed rainfall, 50 to 100 millimeters coming to Vancouver Island towards the lower mainland. Be nice to get that inland a bit further. They could certainly use some of that soaking rain in the areas of drought. Now, speaking of soaking rains, all right, not necessarily that intense, but we have had some here just to the southwestern portion of the province, just making its way over the international border. We've got that strong ridge of high pressure. That's still doing the battle trying to keep the skies clear and holding the more active weather to the south, but as it moves off towards the east, a few things will happen. We'll get into a stronger easterly flow. The winds will pick up on the backside of that ridge. But the other thing that happens is as it breaks down and moves eastward, we see more cloud cover, and we're headed into the weekend here. And yes, some showers starting to rotate in from south to north. So as we go through just the daytime into Saturday, this isn't for tomorrow, this is Saturday, you'll see Estevan getting 10 to 15 millimeters of rain, lesser amounts at that point, stretching further north, but a bit more comes in as we go towards Sunday. So the wind's not terribly strong tomorrow morning. It's as we go into the afternoon and evening hours, we'll get into some stronger gusts, especially to the southeast here. And then they die a bit through the overnight and pick up again as we go into Saturday. So your forecast for Regina for tomorrow afternoon, how about, we'll call it a mix of sun and cloud, but more sun, 22 degrees, that chance of showers into Saturday and Sunday. Yes, in time for the weekend, but then that warm up comes as we get into next week, and some nice readings. A beautiful day in Saskatoon tomorrow, 23 as we go into those afternoon hours, and then again bringing that chance a little bit later in the weekend into Sunday to have some showers show up, and then that bump up in those temperatures. It'll be easier to dress on those days, right, Sam?
That's right. Thanks, Colette. To mark the United Nations International Day of Peace, also known as Peace Day, a flag was raised at Regina City Hall today. It was initiated by two groups in the city, Making Peace Vigil and the Regina Peace Council. In raising the flag, they said their thoughts are both with the people of Ukraine and with the people who lived in tents in front of City Hall for 42 days. They called on the feds to push for a settlement in Ukraine and for local levels of government to do more to eliminate poverty. We'll be back after the break.
When it comes to your news, you want up-to-the-minute access. Anytime, anywhere. Get the facts straight from the source. Download the free CBC News app or visit cbcnews.ca for news you can trust.
Welcome back. At a time when 1 in 5 Canadians don't have a family doctor, a debate is raging about how long their medical training should be. Right now, it's 2 years, but there's a move to add an extra year by 2027, raising fears of even more physician shortages. Karen Pauls explains.
This idyllic cottage community is just 2 hours east of Winnipeg in northwestern Ontario. But it's still hard to lure family doctors to work here.
In rural areas, the family doctor, ER doctor, anesthetist, hospitalist, they're all the same people. So we are short across the board and just trying so hard to keep the services available for our patients, our families, our community members.
Dr. Sarah Giles worries plans to extend family medicine residency from 2 to 3 years will mean doctor shortages will get even worse in communities like this.
It's just going to prolong the process and we will have fewer graduates. It's a foreseeable disaster and it's an unnecessary disaster.
But the College of Family Physicians of Canada says patient needs are getting more complex, and 2 years of training isn't enough to cover everything family physicians will need to know in the community. Things like elder care, mental health and addictions, and Indigenous health.
It's really not in any way an indictment of current training. It's just more we need to keep up with the times and we need to make sure that our training kind of evolves.
The advocacy group representing 10,000 Canadian medical residents disagrees.
In the absence of a very well-defined, well-rationalized, evidence-based reason to extend training, that we cannot support any extension of training.
I do think that if the residency had been 3 years, I think it would have potentially impacted my decision to go into family medicine.
Dr. Zeke Blumenkrantz has been working as a family doctor since July.
In fairness, I don't think anything can really prepare you for independent practice. Doesn't matter how many years of residency or fellowships you do. I feel like after 2 years, I am quite well prepared to work as an independent family physician. You know, in the first 6 months of independent practice, you will likely learn more than you have in your entire residency.
Canada does have some of the shortest training for family doctors in the world, but some groups, like the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario, say the training should actually be shorter, focusing on core skills and not longer. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Kenora, Ontario.
And Colette is back with one last look at your weather.
Yes, we're heading into the end of the week, Sam, but of course it's also going to be the last day, full day of summertime before we hit the fall season, and it's going to be a treat in many cases. Some rain closer to the border, to the south of us, and that's going to take its time to rotate to the north. So midnight, 13 degrees, Regina, and we're looking at a few clouds, and we'll still see that into the morning hours, but there's going to be plenty of sunshine in there as well. Becoming partly cloudy, and even by noontime already warming up to about 19 degrees. 7 at midnight tonight, we're almost there. And then just looking at Saskatoon at what happens for 8 a.m., it actually dips a little bit further. And then we go into the afternoon, full on sunshine, 19 by noon. Now we're going to pick it up a couple of degrees more from there as we head into the afternoon hours and sail into the weekend.
Thanks, Colette. And that is it for us tonight. For news anytime, you can always head to cbc.ca/Sask or Saskatoon. Subscribe to the CBC Saskatchewan YouTube channel or download the CBC News app. Colette and I will be back with more local news and weather tonight at 11. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.